Picture this: July 1954. Eisenhower's in the White House. Elvis is about to change music forever, and America's highways are about to meet their most iconic bus. The Greyhound Scenicruiser rolled off the assembly line in Pontiac, Michigan, promising a revolution in cross-country travel. With its distinctive two-level design and panoramic windows, it looked like the future had arrived on 10 wheels. But here's what they didn't tell you in those glossy brochures. Behind that gleaming chrome and those sweeping curves was a mechanical nightmare that would cost Greyhound millions, destroy a decades-long partnership with General Motors, and turn bus drivers' lives into a daily battle with temperamental machinery. This wasn't just a bus with problems. This was an engineering disaster wrapped in beautiful Raymond Loewy styling. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on one of the biggest cover-ups in American automotive history. From secret trips to Germany, to test competitors' engines, to a $13 million emergency rebuild that couldn't save the design. These are the 13 shocking secrets behind the Scenicruiser that Greyhound and GM desperately wanted to keep hidden. Fact 1. The design nearly broke federal law. Let me start with something most people don't know. The Scenicruiser wasn't just ambitious, it was technically illegal when they started designing it. Back in the late 1940s, most states had strict laws limiting buses to 35 feet in length. Raymond Loewy, the legendary French-born industrial designer who gave us everything from the Coca-Cola bottle to Air Force One's paint scheme, originally sketched the Scenicruiser as a 35-foot bus in 1942. But Greyhound had bigger plans. They wanted a 40-foot monster that could carry more passengers and offer amenities nobody had seen before. So what did they do? They built a prototype called the GX2 between 1947 and 1949 and used it as a lobbying tool to get those length restrictions lifted. Think about that. They had to change the law before they could even legally build the thing. The GX2 featured the split-level design that would become famous, with 10 seats on the lower level alongside the driver and restroom, and 33 seats up top with those panoramic views. It worked. States began lifting their restrictions, and the 40-foot era was born. Fact 2. GM used twin engines because they weren't ready. Here's where the problem started, and boy, did they start early. The production Scenicruiser that debuted in 1954 had one of the strangest powertrains ever put in a commercial vehicle. Instead of one engine, it had two Detroit diesel 471 four-cylinder engines mounted side by side in a shallow V formation, each producing 160 horsepower. Why two engines? Was it for redundancy? Extra power? Nope. It was because GM simply didn't have an 8-cylinder diesel engine ready for production when the Scenicruiser was being designed. The legendary 8V71 engine didn't exist yet. Rather than delay the project, GM's engineers decided to bolt two smaller engines together and hope for the best. Each bus had these twin engines connected by a fluid coupling, driving through a single 3-speed transmission with a manual 2-speed clutch that gave 6 forward speeds. On paper, it might have seemed clever. In practice, it was a disaster waiting to happen. This Rube Goldberg contraption proved to be one of the most unreliable powertrains in bus history. Fact 3. The clutch system made drivers hate their jobs. If you thought the twin-engine setup was bad, wait until you hear about the clutch. The original Scenicruiser used a solenoid-operated clutch, which sounds fancy until you understand what it actually meant for the poor souls who had to drive these beasts 8 hours a day. The solenoid clutch was essentially on or off, with no in-between. That meant every start from a stoplight and every gear change came with an inevitable jerk that threw passengers around the cabin. Imagine trying to smoothly merge onto a highway while your bus lurches like a bucking bronco with every shift. The drivers hated it. Passengers complained constantly. Greyhound's reputation for smooth, comfortable travel was taking a beating. GM eventually fixed this problem in 1955 by replacing the solenoid system with a mechanical linkage that gave smoother starts. But here's the thing, they had already delivered hundreds of buses with the awful original system. Greyhound had to retrofit every single one at enormous cost. And this was just the beginning of the modifications these buses would need. Fact 4. Drivers needed special training and still couldn't master it. The transmission setup in the Scenicruiser was completely different from every other bus in Greyhound's fleet. While all their other buses had straightforward 4-speed manual transmissions, the Scenicruiser had this bizarre 3-speed transmission with a 2-speed splitter, giving 6 forward speeds total. The shift pattern was completely different, and the technique required to operate it smoothly took weeks to master. Greyhound had to create special training programs just for Scenicruiser drivers. Experienced drivers who'd been piloting buses for decades found themselves back in training school, learning a whole new way to shift gears. And here's the kicker, most of them never really liked it. Even after mastering the system, drivers consistently reported that they preferred the conventional transmissions in the older buses. The Scenicruiser might have looked futuristic, but it drove like a compromise that satisfied nobody. Fact 5. The frame started cracking. Almost immediately, while everyone was focused on the engine and transmission problems, structural issues were developing that would prove even more serious. The Scenicruiser used a monocoque design, meaning the body itself was the structure, with no separate frame underneath. This was advanced engineering for the time, but it came with a serious flaw. Within months of entering service, Scenicruisers began developing cracks in the frame structure, particularly around the side windows in the rear quarter of the coach, right above the rear axle. This wasn't just cosmetic damage. These were structural cracks that compromised the integrity of the entire vehicle. The stress of the road, combined with the weight of a full passenger load and luggage, was literally tearing these buses apart at the seams. GM's vaunted reputation for coach building was cracking right along with the buses. This was supposed to be their flagship model, built exclusively for their biggest customer, and it was falling apart. The problems were so severe that many buses that made it into the 1970s needed external panels removed and additional reinforcements welded in just to keep them roadworthy. Fact 6. Greyhound shipped one to Germany in desperation. This is the moment that shows just how desperate Greyhound had become. Frustrated beyond measure with GM's inability or unwillingness to fix the engine problems, Greyhound did something almost unthinkable. They shipped one of their Scenicruisers all the way to Germany to have Mercedes-Benz install one of their diesel engines and test it on the Autobahn. Let that sink in. America's biggest bus company was so fed up with America's biggest manufacturer that they went to a German competitor to see if they could salvage the design. This wasn't just a technical decision, it was a massive slap in the face to General Motors. The message was clear: if you can't fix your engines, we'll find someone who can. While there's no record of Mercedes actually installing their engine in the Scenicruiser, the fact that Greyhound was willing to ship a bus across the Atlantic for testing shows the severity of the crisis. This was a relationship on the rocks, and things were about to get even worse. Fact 7. The public battle escalated into a lawsuit. By 1956, just 2 years after the Scenicruiser's debut, the situation had deteriorated to the point where Greyhound and GM were no longer even trying to keep up appearances. They began trading public insults in the press, airing their dirty laundry for everyone to see. Greyhound complained about reliability and availability rates. GM countered with claims that Greyhound's maintenance practices were inadequate. The war of words escalated into something far more serious: a lawsuit. Greyhound took General Motors to court over the Scenicruiser's problems. While the exact details of the lawsuit and subsequent settlement remain somewhat murky, historians agree that the lawsuit thoroughly ruptured what had been a decades-long, mutually beneficial relationship. This wasn't just a spat between business partners. This was a public divorce that would reshape the entire bus manufacturing industry. Greyhound never ordered another Scenicruiser after the initial batch of 1,000 buses already under contract. The dream of an ongoing production run, with improvements and refinements in later models, died in a courtroom. Fact 8. Only 979 buses survived for the rebuild. Between 1954 and 1961, something happened to 22 of the original 1001 Scenecruisers that Greyhound had purchased. They were totaled in accidents and never rebuilt. That might not sound like many, but it's revealing. The Scenecruiser was 40 feet long with a high center of gravity due to its two-level design. When accidents happened, they were often catastrophic. This meant that when Greyhound finally decided to address the mechanical problems with a complete rebuild, only 979 buses remained in the fleet. Those 22 buses that were gone represented not just metal and glass, but also the human cost of putting a flawed design on America's highways. Every one of those accidents had drivers, passengers, and other motorists involved, some of whom likely suffered serious injuries. Fact 9. The $13 million fix that saved nothing. In 1959, Detroit Diesel finally unveiled what GM should have had ready 5 years earlier: the 8V71 engine, a proper V8 diesel rated at 318 horsepower. This was the solution everyone had been waiting for. But implementing it wouldn't be cheap or simple. Greyhound signed a contract with the Marmon-Herrington Corporation of Indianapolis for what would become one of the most expensive vehicle rebuilding programs in history. Over 11 months beginning in October 1961, Marmon-Herrington would completely overhaul the drivetrain of every surviving Scenecruiser at a cost of over $13 million. In today's money, we're talking about something north of $130 million. The rebuild was comprehensive. Out went the twin 471 engines, replaced by single 8V71 engines. Out went the troublesome 3-speed transmission with the 2-speed splitter, replaced by a conventional 4-speed manual Spicer transmission. Reinforcement plates were added above the rear wheels and below the upper deck windows, hidden beneath the skin. The interiors were refreshed. The exterior was updated with new Greyhound lettering and reflective gold striping. They were even renamed Super Scenecruisers. But here's the tragedy. It was too late. The damage to Greyhound and GM's relationship was irreparable. Greyhound had already begun looking elsewhere for buses. In 1958, they had purchased Motor Coach Industries of Canada. By the time the last Super Scenecruiser rolled out of its rebuild, Greyhound was already committed to buying exclusively from MCI. The $13 million couldn't save the Scenecruiser program. It could only make the buses functional enough to serve until they could be replaced. Fact 10. The structural problems never really got fixed. Even after the massive rebuild, even after adding reinforcement plates and structural supports, the Scenecruisers kept cracking. The fundamental problem with the monocoque design and the stress points around those large upper windows couldn't be completely solved without redesigning the entire bus. By the 1970s, many of the Scenecruisers that were still running had to have trim panels removed from between the upper side windows so additional external reinforcements could be welded on. These buses looked like they were being held together with Band-Aids, because they essentially were. Mechanics reported that working on Scenecruisers was a constant source of frustration. The complicated systems, the ongoing structural issues, the inadequate diagnostic tools, and sometimes spotty parts availability all combined to make these buses a maintenance nightmare. There were even reports of disgusted drivers and mechanics occasionally being careless with the buses or, in extreme cases, deliberately abusing them out of sheer frustration. The Scenicruiser had become a symbol of everything that could go wrong when style was prioritized over engineering practicality. Fact 11. It killed GM's dominance in bus manufacturing. The Scenicruiser disaster had consequences that went far beyond Greyhound's fleet. Before the Scenicruiser, GM's truck and coach division had been the undisputed king of intercity bus manufacturing in America. Their legendary Silverside buses and the reputation of their Detroit diesel engines had given them an almost monopolistic position. But two things happened in 1956 that changed everything. First, the very public battle with Greyhound over the Scenicruiser damaged GM's reputation across the industry. Other bus companies took note. If GM couldn't get it right for their biggest customer, why take the risk? Second, the U.S. Department of Justice filed a civil antitrust suit against GM and Greyhound, forcing GM to start selling their Detroit diesel engines to competitors. This had been a huge competitive advantage. Once Beck, Flexible, MCI, and others could buy Detroit diesel engines and put them in their own designs, GM's edge disappeared. The combination of these factors sent GM's intercity bus business into a decline from which it would never recover. They continued making buses into the 1960s, but in ever smaller numbers. By 1980, GM had exited the intercity bus market entirely. The Scenicruiser, which was supposed to cement GM's dominance for another generation, instead triggered the beginning of the end. Fact 12. Most got converted to motorhomes. When Greyhound finally began retiring the Scenicruisers in the mid-1970s, about 200 of them were still running. The buses were sold off, and many found a second life that Raymond Loewy probably never imagined, as motorhomes. Companies like Liberty Coach in Chicago specialized in converting retired Greyhound buses into luxury RVs, and the Scenicruiser, with its two-level layout and spacious interior, was perfect for the job. But converting a Scenicruiser was no simple task. The buses had a center aisle with seats on raised platforms running down both sides. All the operational systems, the fuel lines, air lines, and electrical runs were routed through these raised areas. To create a proper motorhome with adequate headroom for a bathroom and kitchen, all those systems had to be relocated to the baggage area underneath, and the floor had to be lowered. It required extensive re-engineering and mechanical work before any interior design could even begin. Today, of the approximately 220 to 230 Scenicruisers known to survive, most have been converted to motorhomes. Only about 25 retain their original coach interiors. These survivors are prized possessions of bus enthusiasts and museums, valued as much for their historical significance as for their undeniable style. Fact 13. The first one is still for sale. Here's a final twist to the Scenicruiser story that brings us right up to today. PD 4501-001, the very first production Scenicruiser to roll off the line in 1954, is currently for sale. This bus, which has the distinction of never leaving Greyhound's ownership throughout its entire existence, was part of the Greyhound Historic Collection until 2022. That's when Greyhound was acquired by the Munich-based company Flixbus, and the new owners began disbanding the historic fleet. Greyhound depots, buses, and pieces of American transportation history were put on the chopping block. This first Scenicruiser, fleet number 1954, named after its year of manufacture, was initially listed for $950,000 in November 2022. When it didn't sell, the price was dropped to $650,000, where it remains today. Think about that for a moment. The very first example of what was supposed to be GM's crowning achievement, the bus that would define American intercity travel for a generation, is sitting unsold despite multiple price drops. It's been restored beautifully and is in pristine condition, but nobody wants to pay even a discounted price for the symbol of one of the automotive industry's most expensive failures. It's a testament to how thoroughly the Scenicruiser's reputation was destroyed by its mechanical problems. So, there you have it, 13 shocking secrets about the Greyhound Scenicruiser, the beautiful disaster that changed American bus manufacturing forever. From twin engines that should never have been used, to structural cracks that could never be fully fixed, to a $13 million rebuild that came too late to save the program, the Scenicruiser is a masterclass in what happens when style and ambition run ahead of engineering reality. But here's the thing I want you to remember. Despite all these problems, despite the lawsuits and the bankruptcies and the destroyed relationships, the Scenicruiser became an icon. People who rode them in the 1950s and 1960s remember them fondly. They represented the optimism of post-war America, the promise of the open road, and the belief that tomorrow's technology would always be better than today's. The Scenicruiser failed as a product, but it succeeded as a symbol. And maybe that's worth something. Now, I want to hear from you. Did you ever ride in a Scenicruiser? Do you remember seeing them on the highways when you were a kid? Maybe you worked on them as a mechanic, or your father or grandfather drove one, or perhaps you're one of the lucky people who owns one today. Drop your stories in the comments below. The Scenicruiser may have been a mechanical disaster, but it's part of our shared automotive heritage, and every story about these buses helps keep that history alive. If you enjoyed diving into this forgotten chapter of automotive history, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future videos. We've got plenty more stories about the vehicles that shaped America, the good, the bad, and the spectacularly flawed. And if you found this video informative, give it a thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more content like this. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the most beautiful failures teach us more than the easy successes. The Scenicruiser may have been a disaster they tried to hide, but 70 years later, we're still talking about it. That's gotta count for something. Until next time, keep those wheels turning and those engines running. Or in the case of the Scenicruiser, keep both engines running.